Hilal YURTSEVEN is the first speaker of the second session, so I would like to introduce her. She is an English teacher at a private high school and at the same time a graduate student at Istanbul University Faculty of Letters, American Culture and Literature Department. She is an active member of Turkish Semiotic Society and is charge of Youth Unit of Turkish Semiotic Society. Her research interests comprise literature, linguistics, language, literary theories, textual analysis, interpretation, and semiotics. She is also interested in the field of semiotics. She continues his interdisciplinary studies within the framework of language, culture, literature, and semiotics. She has also an article published in an international academic journal titled Theory and Practice, Literary Semiotics and Text Analysis of Shirley Jackson's Short Story of the Lottery. I leave the floor graduate student Hilal YURTSEVEN to make her presentation titled Traces of Aesthetics in Sabahattin Ali's Narratives.
Thank you so much, Betül.
You're welcome.
Okay. Does my screen look good? Everything is okay?
Yes, everything is perfect.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, hello everyone. Today I will present you my study on the topic, the aesthetic traces in Sabahattin Ali's narratives. I will also mention some of the points I have not touched on here and other selected stories by the author in my paper later. And okay, so first of all, I would like to mention my aim briefly. So each community has aesthetic values and elements that are unique to its own culture to understand or reveal beauty. And depending on culture, the aesthetic understanding of each community or nation also differs because all the values, beliefs, and the traditions inherited from the ancestors can be considered the source of the aesthetics of that society. So Doğan Günay also defines culture as a complex structure that encompasses religious beliefs, art, everything that people make, produce, create, learn, and teach.
Hilal, I'm sorry. Sorry for interruption,
Okay.
but we couldn't see your PowerPoint here.
You cannot see it.
I cannot see it. I don't know the others.
Maybe there's a problem with you. Is
With
anyone?
me? It's okay.
Is anyone have a problem?
I can see the screen. And PowerPoint is okay.
Okay. So Doğan Günay actually defines culture as a complex structure that encompasses religious beliefs, art, everything that people make, produce, create, learn, and teach. So based on this definition, the concepts of aesthetics and literature also constitute the subsystems of culture because both concepts appear as a result of the human artistic production. So accordingly, in Turkish literature, as a production of Turkish culture as well, it's possible to see the different aesthetic patterns pertaining to the values of the society in terms of the worldview or the societal structure in particular times of Turkish history. So the aim of this study is to trace some patterns and the motifs in Sabahattin Ali's some narratives within the book titled Yeni Dünya, in English, The New World, in terms of aesthetics. So though a close reading and examination of the Sabahattin Ali's narratives, it will be tried to be explored how some aesthetic concepts or elements or devices or the patterns contribute to the overall aesthetic experience of the narratives. Yes, and now to talk about Sabahattin Ali and his storytelling briefly. Sabahattin Ali, who appeared in Turkish literature towards the end of the 1920s, gave many works such as poems, stories, letters, plays, and translations in his short life, because he died in, if I'm not wrong, at the age of 41, and became a pioneer of his generation in ensuring the development of Turkish literature, especially in the story and novel genres. So the narrative tradition or storytelling in Turkish literature also started with epics and has reached the present day by undergoing changes with various interactions in history, especially from the 20th century onwards. The topics such as social problems, Anatolia, Anatolian people, and daily life.
Okay. Sorry for interrupting. The presentation is not progressing. Are you using the PPT tab?
Yes.
Okay, now we are on the third slide. Is it right?
Yes, we are on the third slide. Sabahattin Ali and his storytelling.
Okay,
is it okay?
No problem.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Betül. So the narrative tradition or the storytelling in Turkish literature started with the epics and has reached the present day by undergoing changes with various interactions in history. So especially from the 20th century onwards, topics such as the social problems, Anatolia and Anatolian people, and daily life have begun to appear in Turkish storytelling. So in this respect, in Ali's works, especially in his stories, it's possible to see the reflection of Anatolia and Anatolian people because his literary personality was more on a social, realist axis. So hence, it would not be wrong to say that the experiences and the observations of him, of his life, are reflected in his works. He is an influential figure in the Turkish literature of the Republican period and has mostly worked in the short story genre. So as Sarıtaş stated that Sabahattin Ali draws attention to a wide range of issues deeply affected society and criticized the distortions from his own point of view. And in doing so, he also managed to include the aesthetic features in his narratives. So the Yeni Dünya, the New World in English, in which the narratives that are subject of this study are included, is a collection of the author's short stories and contains 13 of them. And Isıtmak için and Uyku, in English, for warming and sleep, are also included in this book. And I will focus on these two stories in this study. And now I'm on the fourth slide. Is it okay? The screen?
Yes, there's no problem.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So to start with the fifth narrative, which is the first narrative tried to be examined in this study. And as you can see in the image of the map of Turkey, the narrative Isıtmak için, the forewarming in English, takes place in Konya in Anatolia, which is colored in red on the map. Yes. Okay. The artistry and the craftsmanship employed in Sabahattin Ali's narratives also creates a particular sensory and emotional experience for the readers. So it can be said that the subtle aesthetic elements, devices or concepts or the patterns such as grotesque, setting and description, tone and mood, characterization, and rhythm in the flow of the narrative, etc., contribute to the overall aesthetic experience of Sabahattin Ali's narratives. So for this narrative particularly, first of all, to summarize the story briefly, the narrative actually Isıtmak için for warming, written in 1909, takes place in the Küllükbaşı neighborhood of Konya in a city of Anatolia. So the narrative is about a lonely man's feelings of pity and sadness for a washerwoman who is very poor. So this lonely woman continues his life as a tenant. This lonely man, continues his life as a tenant in the house of an Armenian woman. So as of that period, a large part of the people in Anatolia were struggling with poverty. So it was possible to come across women who went to other people's houses to do the laundry to earn a daily wage. So the woman in the narrative, who has a sick little daughter at home and goes to the houses to laundry, is also from the poorer part of the society. So she goes to the main character's house to do the laundry, and what draws the readers and the main character's attention at this point is the way she's portrayed, actually. So the narrative ends with the death of the woman's sick little daughter. And in fact, at the end of the narrative, it's revealed that this woman and her daughter are unable to meet, their needs for warming and the food. So at this point, I want to read the quotes from the narrative, and I also translated these quotations from the original narrative. So there was an old woman who came every 15 or 20 days to do my laundry. Old age was more in her appearance. In fact, she was much younger, maybe 30 or 35, but with her diminutive body that gave the impression of the being parched and shriveled, her long, thin, yellow hands like spider's legs, and her black eyes that were as deep as a dead woman's. She had the impression of an old woman whose age could not be counted. So I remember her pointy nose, always blue from the cold, like a dead body color also. So her body bent double at the wash tube from morning till night, her voice breathy and trembling through her wrinkled lips. So this face standing still in front of me was no different from a dead body. So her hollowed eyes were completely lost, and the lips around her toothless mouth became thinner and more wrinkled. So this female character of the narrative is a good example of the downtrodden type because especially the description of this character reveals her living conditions and hardships in life. So she's portrayed in a grotesque way, such that although she is young, she has the opposite body characteristics of a young person, as it's seen on the screen also. So this female character is in a pathetic state. So instead of stating the social situation and living conditions of her, the author actually prefers to talk about her appearance in a grotesque way in this narrative. So the author's portrayal of a young person as an old one, and even mentioning a body part in a way that resembles a spider, presents the unusual perception of the body in a strange way. So this shows the presence of an aesthetic concern in the text, because it's possible to say that especially the expressions of eyes of a dead woman and hands like spider's legs appeal to the reader's senses. So these carefully chosen expressions actually go beyond mere description and are meticulously crafted to not only convey a visual representation, but also to engage the reader's senses on a profound level. So thus the reader is given an opportunity to develop empathy through this female character with the people lived in the same conditions at that time in Anatolia. So in doing so, the author skillfully transforms the text into a sensory experience where the aesthetics play a crucial role in enhancing the overall impact and resonance of the narrative. So the grotesque portrayals are the remnants of the woman in the male character's mind in the narrative, because he remembers her with the blue from cold complexion, hollowed eyes, and toothless mouth. So here the author is talking about the appearance of a lifeless body by using these expressions. So these grotesque descriptions exhibit the woman's poor living conditions through her body. So delineating the female character in this way is much more effective than directly mentioned conditions. So thus, the use of grotesque descriptions as an aesthetic aspect in the narrative might help readers to understand the Anatolian people struggles of the period through this woman. So therefore, the presence of grotesque descriptions in this narrative may be a deliberate choice that can significantly affect the aesthetics of the text. So here it can be said that these descriptions invite readers to engage with the text both emotionally and also thought-provokingly. So through the grotesque descriptions, readers might make social and cultural commentary by shedding light on social norms, values, and the conditions. So really for this narrative. Here, the grotesque, strange, bizarre, and disturbing aspects of human existence in an aesthetic was employed by a Turkish author in the 1930s in Turkey, can also be absorbed from my point of view. And as for the second narrative, this story, Uyku, Sleep in English, written also in 1939, is about a journey in Anatolia. Here, Sabahattin depiction of the Turkey of the period in his stories is important because it seems that the terrible working conditions that the drivers were exposed to at that time were likely to cause accidents because they were working really harsh and bad conditions. Also, it's possible to see an exemplification also this situation in this narrative. So to give main points about the story, instead of waiting for a bus to go to Sivas, sorry, two friends start waiting on the road where the trucks often pass and pick up passengers. And luckily, a truck comes and picks them up. So the truck driver hasn't slept properly because he has been on the road for 2 days. So he would constantly rub his eyes and try to drive his sleep away. And in between, he stops to pour water into the radiator of the car and trying to rest himself. But the longer he drives, the more he wants to fall asleep. So when the driver starts to fall asleep at the wheel, they risk several accidents, which make the passengers, very anxious and nervous. So while the driver begs for sleep, one of the passengers insistently asks him to continue to drive. But the driver can't take it anymore and falls asleep at the wheel. And at the end of the narrative, the two friends are forced to continue on foot to complete their journey to Sivas. I also again want to read some quotations translated from the narrative. And these are some selective quotes from the narrative actually. So I will also add the other quotes in my paper. Okay, I felt a strange nausea from the jolt of the car or something. In the meantime, the car gave a few quick jerks and the adjutant stopped chattering and rumbled, "Hey buddy." Our eyes went back to the driver. We saw that he was moving in panic, rubbing his eyes with one hand and gripping the steering wheel tightly with the other. So the car suddenly stopped. The lanterns illuminated a fountain a few meters away on the left side of the road. So the driver's head fell on the steering wheel and he was immobilized. The same things started repeating every 2 or 3 kilometers. The man's sleepless and half-closed eyes did not miss the smallest fountain on the right or left side of the road. The machine came to a screeching halt. So it's clear on the quotations from the narrative, as you can see on the screen, the passengers are constantly afraid that the driver might fall asleep. But then they continue on the road when the danger passes. So this situation gives the narrative a kind of an ascending and a descending flow that it repeats almost 7 or 8 times in the narrative as a pattern. This pattern causes a tension as if an accident will happen at any moment, but then a feeling of relief comes from, nothing happening. So from the point of view of aesthetic traces, this falling asleep and risking an accident and then getting back on the road again keep the reader on the edge of their seat throughout the story. So just like the increase and the decrease of a rhythm of tension. So as Elmas stated that the rhythm is also the narrative element that draws the reader into the fiction and provides him or her with aesthetic pleasure. So in this context, as an aesthetic pattern, it's possible to talk about the functionality of rhythm in the text, which is created with unique methods in literary works. And yes, on the second slide, as you can see, it's a kind of a representation of the flow of the narrative. I mean, the tense flow, maybe, the increasing and the decreasing. So this rhythm increases in each accident risk situation and decreases when the risk is eliminated. So giving the reader a sense of relief. So regarding aesthetic, in this case, it can be said that the tone of the narrative offers a tense atmosphere depending on the rhythm. So by not directly mentioning again the working conditions of the driver or why he is sleep deprived, the author has actually added an aesthetic value to the story by trying to create a flow of tension that fluctuates throughout the narrative, as illustrated also in the image. So the function of this tension in the narrative can also be seen as an aesthetic element that provides a rhythmic structuring. So the situation might be likened to a musical rhythm because a literary work has an artistic value, just like a piece of music, and does so with words. So this gives the impression that there is a fluctuating situation within this narrative. So this aesthetic feature appeals to the senses because the way the rhythm increases and decreases draws the reader into the narrative. So Elmas also pointed out that the reader participates in the text with the associations formed in his or her mind through rhythm. So using such rhythmic pattern creates a dynamic reading experience, and consequently, examining a text through an aesthetic lens can lead a deeper appreciation of its aesthetic values and authorial attention. So artistry and craftsmanship employed in Sabahattin Ali's narrative also create a particular sensory and emotional experience as it's tried to be examined in this study from my perspective. And I thank you all for listening to my presentation.